If you're ever questioned by detectives, the worst thing you can have is a perfect memory. Real human memory is messy, fragmented, and full of gaps. But when a suspect can account for every single minute of their night 3 weeks ago, that's not innocence, that's a script. Detectives call it the alibi trap, and it is the first sign they are looking at a killer. Think about your own life for a moment. What did you have for dinner last Tuesday? Unless it was a birthday or an anniversary, the details are likely a blur. You might remember it was pasta, or perhaps you remember the cold rain against the window, but you cannot recall the exact second you put your fork down. This is the natural architecture of the human brain. We discard the mundane to make room for the meaningful. Our memories are not high-definition recordings. They are impressionist paintings, smudged at the edges and fading over time. When a detective enters an interrogation room, they aren't looking for a witness who remembers everything. They are looking for the person who remembers too much, because in the world of criminal justice, precision is often the mask of a lie. When a suspect sits across from an investigator and recites a chronological masterpiece of their evening, it sends a chill down the spine of any seasoned officer. They describe the exact time they left the grocery store, the specific song that was playing on the third aisle, and the precise moment they turned the key in their front door. This isn't a recollection, it's a performance. The alibi trap is built on the fear of the unknown. A guilty mind perceives every gap in their story as a potential vulnerability, a hole where the truth might leak through. To fix this, they build a fortress of facts, unaware that the very strength of that fortress is what makes it look suspicious. They trade the organic chaos of reality for the sterile, suspicious order of a rehearsal. Beneath this psychological chess match lies a much darker, more emotional reality. While the perpetrator is busy polishing their narrative, there is a family somewhere waiting for a phone call that will never come. The emotional stakes of these cases are not found in the timelines or the forensics, but in the stolen futures of the victims. For every minute the killer meticulously accounts for in their fake alibi, a real life was being extinguished. The tragedy of the alibi trap is that it reveals a terrifying level of cold-bloodedness. It shows a person who, in the immediate aftermath of a horrific act, did not collapse in guilt, but instead sat down to write a screenplay where they are the misunderstood protagonist. It is the ultimate insult to the deceased, to use the very concept of time to erase the crime committed against them. As we delve deeper into these stories, we must understand that memory is our most fragile asset. It can be manipulated, forgotten, or even invented. But in the pursuit of justice, the gaps are often more telling than the words themselves. A witness who says, "I don't know," might be telling the absolute truth, while the person with the perfect answer is simply waiting for the trap to spring. This paradox, that forgetting is human and remembering is suspicious, is the foundation upon which many of history's most chilling cases were built. It is where the mask begins to slip, and where the echoes of the truth finally start to outrun the lies. The interrogation room was thick with a silence that didn't feel like shock. It felt like a performance. In the center of the staged grief sat a man who didn't just have an alibi, he had a script. When investigators first sat across from him, they expected the fragmented, chaotic memories of a man who had just lost everything. Instead, they were handed a meticulously written, minute-by-minute log of his entire day. It was a chronological masterpiece, detailing every turn of a key, every sip of coffee, and every mundane interaction. But in the world of criminal psychology, perfection is often the loudest confession. Normal human memory is a blurry, selective thing, especially under the weight of trauma. When someone remembers the exact second they looked at a receipt but forgets the color of the sky, the narrative begins to smell of ink and preparation rather than reality. This suspect had fallen into the trap of the over-prepared mind. He believed that by filling every gap in time, he was closing the door on suspicion. He presented his timeline like a shield, confident that if no minute was left unaccounted for, no crime could have occurred. He talked about the 6:42 a.m. trip to the convenience store, the 7:15 a.m. workout, and the 08:03 a.m. phone call to a colleague. It was a suffocating amount of detail. The detectives watched him, not with admiration for his memory, but with a growing sense of dread. They realized they weren't talking to a grieving witness, they were talking to an editor, someone who had spent hours, perhaps days, curating a version of the truth that would stand up to the light. It was a chronological lie, polished to a mirror finish, intended to reflect back only what he wanted them to see. But even the most calculated architect of deception cannot account for the ghosts in the machine. While he was busy perfecting his paper trail, the digital world was silently recording his betrayal. The dramatic collapse of his perfect timeline didn't come from a witness or a fingerprint. It came from a single, overlooked synchronization. He had accounted for his phone, his car, and his face on every surveillance camera he knew existed. However, he forgot the smart home thermostat, a silent witness that recorded a spike in energy at 3:14 a.m., a time when he claimed to be sound asleep miles away. That one digital heartbeat, that one tiny surge of electricity, shattered his entire reality. In that moment, the weight of the lie finally crushed him. The meticulously crafted timeline wasn't a shield anymore. It was the very evidence of his premeditation. Investigators pointed to the 3:14 a.m. discrepancy, and the room went cold. The mask didn't just slip, it disintegrated. This is the tragedy of the perfect alibi. In trying so hard to prove his innocence through a sequence of minutes, he had inadvertently mapped out the exact window of his guilt. The investigators pointed to the 3:14 a.m. discrepancy, and the room went cold. The mask didn't just slip, it disintegrated. This is the tragedy of the perfect alibi. In trying so hard to prove his innocence through a sequence of minutes, he had inadvertently mapped out the exact window of his guilt. The chronological lie serves as a haunting reminder that in the pursuit of justice, it is often the details we try hardest to fix that eventually break us. The truth doesn't need a timeline to be remembered, but a lie requires a calendar, and eventually the calendar always runs out of days. Imagine standing in the cold, clinical silence of an interrogation room. Across from you sits a person whose voice is steady, whose eyes never waver, and whose story is flawless. Too flawless. This is the moment where the science of the staged alibi begins to unravel. In the world of true crime, we often focus on the physical evidence, the DNA, the fingerprints, the digital trail. But the most revealing evidence often lies within the architecture of the lie itself. A staged alibi isn't just a simple deception. It is a calculated attempt to rewrite history, a structural masterpiece built to withstand the crushing weight of a murder investigation. Yet it is in this very pursuit of perfection that the guilty often leave their most distinct psychological footprints. Forensic psychology teaches us that the most sophisticated liars don't build their stories out of thin air. Instead, they utilize what experts call anchor points. These are small, verifiable truths woven into a web of deceit. A suspect might mention the exact time a specific song played on the radio, or a unique weather event that occurred that evening. By tethering their lie to these undeniable moments of reality, they create a psychological safety net. They hope that if the foundation of the story is provably true, the investigators will never question the dark fiction built upon it. It is a desperate attempt to ground a ghost of a story in the physical world, using the truth as a shield to protect a monstrous secret. But the human brain was never designed to maintain such a complex facade without consequence. There is a fundamental cognitive divide between recognition and reconstruction. When we recall a genuine memory, our brain engages in a messy, emotional process of recognition. We see flashes, smell scents, and struggle with chronological gaps. However, when someone stages an alibi, they are forced into reconstruction. They are actively building a linear narrative from scratch. This creates an immense cognitive load, a mental exhaustion that taxes the prefrontal cortex. The liar must simultaneously monitor their own body language, gauge the detective's reaction, and ensure every detail of their fabricated timeline remains consistent. It is a high-wire act where a single slip of the tongue can lead to a total collapse. For a veteran investigator, a perfect story doesn't inspire confidence. It creates a chilling sense of the uncanny. They know that real human memory is inherently fragmented and plagued by natural fuzziness. We forget the mundane. We smudge the edges of time. When a suspect delivers a chronological, minute-by-minute account with surgical precision, it feels wrong. It lacks the organic chaos of human existence. This overcompensation is the ultimate paradox of the staged alibi. The more a person tries to make their story look like the truth, the more it begins to look like a script. In the end, it is the absence of human error, the lack of the very flaws that make us human, that finally reveals the monster hiding behind the mask of innocence. In the sterile, airless confines of an interrogation room, the air doesn't just sit, it weighs. This is the theater where the Reed technique, a psychological chess match, begins its slow, methodical dance. Most people think an interrogation is about shouting and slamming fists on tables, but the reality is far more clinical. It is a process of breaking down the human spirit by offering a full sense of empathy. Detectives aren't just looking for the truth, they are looking for the structural integrity of your lies. They are waiting for the moment when the facade cracks and the truth, no matter how ugly, begins to seep through the floorboards of a carefully constructed alibi. In these moments, the detective isn't just an officer of the law, they are an architect of pressure, building a reality where confession is the only path toward relief. The Reed technique operates on a terrifying premise that every human being has a breaking point where the discomfort of lying eventually outweighs the fear of the consequences. It's a multi-stage descent into vulnerability. First, they establish a baseline, watching how you blink, how you breathe, how you handle a simple question about the weather. Then, the shift happens, a subtle tilt in the room's energy. They move from asking to accusing, presenting a version of events where your guilt is already a foregone conclusion. They offer themes, excuses, or justifications to make the confession seem like an escape hatch. It was an accident, they say. Anyone in your position would have done the same. It is a siren song designed to lure the suspect into a confession that feels, in the heat of the moment, like the only way to breathe again. But perhaps the most lethal weapon in an investigator's arsenal isn't a question at all. It is silence. In the world of high-stakes interrogation, silence is a vacuum that demands to be filled. When a detective stops talking and simply stares, the human brain begins to panic. We are social creatures programmed to bridge the gaps in conversation, and in that desperate rush to fill the void, the suspect starts to over-explain. This is where the gaps appear. These aren't just pauses in speech, they are the inconsistencies between what happened and what is being told. A lie requires maintenance. It requires a constant stream of fabricated details to keep it afloat. But the truth is simple. The truth is heavy. When you try to make a lie sound like the truth, you end up decorating it with too much lace. And that's exactly what the detectives are waiting for. There is a haunting moment in these recordings, a flicker of realization in the suspect's eyes when they understand that their perfect story has become their cage. They've built a narrative so detailed, so seemingly airtight, that they've actually painted themselves into a corner. They remember the exact color of a car they shouldn't have seen. They recall the precise minute of an event they claimed to be asleep for. The very details they thought would save them are now the bars of their cell. They realize that the investigator isn't trying to prove they're lying anymore, they're just watching them drown in their own complexity. It is the finality of that realization, the crushing weight of knowing that your own voice has betrayed you, that makes these rooms the most honest places on earth. In the end, the gaps aren't just missing information, they are the cracks where justice finally finds its way in. In the cold, calculated world of premeditated murder, silence is a weapon, but a paper trail is often used as a shield. Imagine for a moment the audacity of a killer who doesn't just run from the crime, but meticulously constructs a parallel reality. This was the case for the Miller family, who found themselves trapped in a living nightmare while the perpetrator stood among them, feigning grief. The primary suspect didn't just have an excuse, they had physical proof, a simple, unremarkable gas station receipt that placed them 50 miles away at the exact moment the life of a loved one was extinguished. It was a masterclass in deception, or so it seemed, designed to lead investigators into a dead end while the killer enjoyed the safety of a fabricated timeline. For months, the family lived in a suspended animation, their mourning poisoned by the feeling that justice was slipping through their fingers. The emotional weight of watching a killer walk free, protected by a slip of thermal paper, is a burden no person should carry. They looked at the suspect, a person who had shared meals with them, and saw a face of practiced innocence. The betrayal cut deeper than the crime itself. Every time the investigation stalled, the suspect grew bolder, perhaps even believing they had outsmarted the very foundations of the law. They played the role of the grieving friend or relative to perfection, weeping at the funeral, while the receipt sat in an evidence locker, acting as their unbreakable iron curtain. But even the most brilliant plans are subject to the unforgiving laws of physics and technology. The receipt was more than just ink on paper. It was a digital fingerprint. When forensic analysts took a closer look, the facade began to crumble. It wasn't just the timestamp on the front that mattered, but the internal server logs of the gas station's POS system. A minute discrepancy, a mere 30-second lag in the server's clock versus the synchronized GPS data from the suspect's vehicle, exposed the impossible. The killer had obtained the receipt through a clever ruse involving a prepaid transaction and a delayed printout, but they hadn't accounted for the metadata that tracked when the transaction was actually initiated versus when the paper hit the tray. As the technical truth surfaced, the walls finally closed in. The shock on the family's faces when the detectives revealed the technical error was a mix of profound relief and renewed agony. The receipt that was meant to be the killer's salvation became their death warrant. In the end, this case serves as a chilling reminder that in our modern world, we leave traces of our existence in ways we cannot even comprehend. No matter how much a killer tries to manipulate the narrative, the silent, digital witnesses of our lives, the timestamps, the logs, the metadata, never lie. The receipt didn't just ruin a plan. It restored a fragment of the truth to a family that had been left in the dark for far too long. In the cold light of a police interrogation room or beneath the flickering glare of a televised plea, we often witness a phenomenon that defies the logic of the human heart. It is the emotional disconnect, that jarring, visceral gap between the gravity of a tragedy and the behavior of the person claiming to be its victim. When a loved one is lost, the world expects a symphony of sorrow, jagged breaths, incoherent pleas, and a grief so heavy it anchors the soul. But in the most chilling cases of true crime, we see something else entirely. We see a void. We see individuals who seem to be reading from a map of human emotion rather than navigating its terrain, leaving an audience with the unshakable feeling that something is fundamentally wrong with the picture being painted. One of the most haunting manifestations of this disconnect is known as duper's delight. It is a concept pioneered by psychologists to describe the involuntary thrill a liar feels when they believe they are successfully manipulating their audience. It manifests in the most subtle, inappropriate ways. A fleeting, microscopic upturn of the lips during a press conference about a missing child, or a slight glimmer in the eyes while recounting the horror of a discovery. To the untrained eye, it might look like a nervous twitch, but to those who study the architecture of deception, it is a catastrophic leak of the ego. It is the sound of a secret celebration happening behind a mask of mourning, a momentary lapse where the pride of the performance outweighs the necessity of the lie. This disconnect becomes even more apparent when we analyze the substance of their words. When a person is genuinely shattered by loss, their narrative is often chaotic, fragmented, and centered on the visceral absence of the person they loved. However, a suspect masking their guilt often focuses intently on the facts, the timelines, and the logistics. They become historians of their own innocence, obsessing over receipts, traffic lights, and precise minute markers. They provide a surplus of information where there should be an abundance of emotion. By focusing so hard on getting the story right, they forget to show the grief that should accompany it. They treat the investigation like a math problem to be solved rather than a tragedy to be endured, failing to realize that their clinical precision is actually their loudest confession. There is a chilling contrast between a rehearsed script and the raw, jagged edges of a real tragedy. A script is linear. It has a beginning, a middle, and a defensive end. Real grief is a circle. It is messy, repetitive, and often silent. When we watch these high-stakes interviews, we aren't just looking for clues in their words, we are looking for the frequency of the human spirit. When that frequency is flat, when the tears don't produce any salt, and when the anger feels like a theatrical costume, we are witnessing the ultimate betrayal. The emotional disconnect is more than just a red flag. It is a glimpse into a mind that has already moved on from the crime, leaving the rest of us to shiver in the cold shadow of their indifference. Imagine a world where the walls don't just have ears, they have a perfect, infallible memory. In the golden age of crime, an alibi was as simple as a flickering shadow or a paid-off witness who could be coerced into silence. But today, the shadow is cast in binary, and it never forgets. We walk through our lives believing we are the protagonists of a private story, yet every step we take is being whispered to a cold constellation of satellites. Google Maps doesn't just show you the way home, it archives your every hesitation, every detour, and every stop at a location you swore you never visited. The modern criminal doesn't just leave a footprint in the mud, they leave a digital trail of breadcrumbs that glows with the heat of 1,000 servers, turning nowhere into somewhere with terrifying clinical precision. It is the ultimate irony of our era. The very tools we use to optimize our lives are the ones that eventually dismantle them. Your health app, designed to track your fitness and longevity, becomes the silent narrator of your most desperate moments. It counts your steps as you pace nervously in a dark alleyway. It records the frantic, rhythmic spike in your heart rate at 3 a.m. when you claim to be fast asleep. This unseen witness sits in your pocket, vibrating with the data of your betrayal. While you are busy weaving a complex tapestry of lies for the investigators, your phone is already delivering the truth in a cold sequence of timestamps and coordinates that no lawyer can argue against. You are carrying your own executioner in the palm of your hand. We have surrounded ourselves with an invisible web of intelligence that we can no longer control. Every smart bulb, every voice-activated assistant, and every interconnected appliance is a potential informant waiting for the right prompt from a forensic technician. The unseen witness is not just about the internet. It is about the physical reality we have built where privacy is a ghost of the past. You might delete your browser history or scrub your social media profiles, but you cannot delete the metadata of your existence. There is a profound, tragic beauty in how the objects we love, the things we brought into our homes for comfort and convenience, become the final nails in the coffin of a carefully constructed lie. To attempt to hide in the digital age is to shout into a vacuum that echoes forever. We are living in a permanent present, where our past actions are always accessible, always verifiable, and always lurking beneath the glowing surface of our screens. The trap is not just the technology itself, but the human arrogance that believes it can outsmart an algorithm that never sleeps and never feels emotion. As we close this chapter, we must face the chilling reality. In the eyes of the digital world, we are never truly alone, and we are never truly silent. Every pulse, every click, and every movement is a thread in a net that is slowly, inevitably, tightening around the neck of the truth. The interrogation room is perhaps the most honest place on Earth. Within these 4 sterile walls, the air feels heavier, a suffocating mixture of recycled oxygen and rising panic. In the beginning, the suspect usually sits with a deceptive calm, leaning back with a calculated confidence that suggests they are several moves ahead of the law. They have rehearsed their alibi until it feels like a second skin, a flawless narrative of where they were and who they were with. But as we watch the footage, we aren't just looking for words. We are looking for the minute fractures in the facade. Every forced smile and every overly detailed explanation is a brick in a wall that is destined to crumble. The detectives know this. They wait, they listen, and they allow the suspect to weave a web so intricate that it eventually becomes a noose. As the hours tick by, the psychological shift begins to manifest in ways that are both subtle and visceral. You can see the exact moment the confidence drains from their face, replaced by a cold, biting desperation. The body language changes. The open posture tightens, shoulders hunch, and hands that were once steady begin to fidget with a styrofoam cup or the hem of a shirt. This is the transition from witness to predator cornered. The suspect realizes that the interrogation room, which once felt like a stage for their performance, now feels like a tomb. They begin to fill the silence with nervous chatter, trying to explain away the inconsistencies that the investigators haven't even pointed out yet. It is a fascinating, albeit haunting display of the human mind trying to survive a reality it can no longer control. Then comes the moment of impact, the introduction of the unanswered variable. This is usually a single piece of evidence, perhaps a grain of digital data or a silent frame of CCTV footage that contradicts the very core of their alibi. The lead investigator leans in, their voice dropping to a low, rhythmic cadence that demands an answer. They ask the specific question that ends the charade. If you were at home alone, as you say, then why does your phone show you were standing in that alleyway at 3 a.m.? The silence that follows that question is deafening. It is the sound of a life collapsing in real time. The suspect's eyes dart around the room as if searching for an exit that doesn't exist, their mouth opening and closing without a sound. This is the breaking point, the definitive end of the lie. In these final moments, the masks are discarded entirely. The suspect is no longer a grieving friend or concerned neighbor. They are a person stripped of their excuses, staring into the abyss of their own making. The emotional weight in the room becomes almost unbearable as the truth finally forces its way into the light. It is a grim reminder that while a lie can travel halfway around the world, it eventually has to return to this small, cold room to face the consequences. This deep dive into the mechanics of the confession reveals not just the techniques of the law, but the fundamental fragility of the human spirit when it is weighed down by the burden of guilt. The breaking point isn't just a victory for the investigation, it is a final, tragic moment of clarity where the truth, no matter how ugly, finally wins. In the quiet aftermath of every investigation, we are often left standing at the same precipice. We live in an age where information is instantaneous, where every question is expected to have a digital solution, and where the word unsolved feels like a failure of technology or human will. Yet, as we peer into the darkest corners of the human experience, we are forced to confront a sobering reality. The truth is rarely a straight line. It is a tangled web of contradictions, lost memories, and whispers that lead nowhere. To admit that we do not know the full story isn't a defeat. It is in fact the most honest position one can take. In the realm of true crime, the pursuit of a definitive ending often blinds us to the nuances of the journey, leaving us with a hollow closure that satisfies the mind but ignores the complexity of the soul. This brings us to the profound and often uncomfortable distinction between true innocence and the mere appearance of it. In the court of public opinion, the line is frequently blurred by optics, charisma, and the narrative we choose to believe. We want our villains to look like monsters and our victims to be beyond reproach, but reality refuses to be so cooperative. A person can be legally exonerated while carrying the crushing weight of suspicion for a lifetime, just as a guilty heart can hide behind a mask of perfect virtue. We are obsessed with the vibe of a suspect, dissecting their body language and their tone of voice as if we could peer directly into their conscience. But the appearance of innocence is a curated image, while true innocence is a silent state of being that often lacks the flashing evidence required to convince a skeptical world. Justice, as we conceive it, is frequently a human attempt to impose order on a chaotic universe. We crave a balance, a sense that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and that every crime will eventually meet its punishment. But the human psyche is a labyrinth, and justice is often delayed, denied, or simply misplaced. We revisit these cold cases and lingering mysteries, not just because we want to play detective, but because they hold a mirror up to our own fears. They remind us that the world is unpredictable and that the people walking beside us carry secrets we may never fathom. We are drawn to the shadows because they are a part of us, representing the parts of our collective history that refuse to stay buried. Ultimately, the messiness of the truth is what makes these stories evergreen. They do not fade with the turning of a calendar page because the questions they raise are fundamental to our existence. Why do we hurt one another? Can someone truly disappear? Is it possible for the guilty to find peace? As we close this chapter, we must accept that some doors are meant to remain locked. The lesson isn't found in a DNA match or a surprise confession, but in the humility we feel when faced with the vastness of what remains hidden. We find a strange kind of solace in the mystery itself, accepting that while we may never have all the answers, the search for them defines our humanity. The truth isn't a destination we reach. It is a difficult, winding path we choose to walk, even when we know it leads into the mist.